Hello and welcome to the GX Podcast, the world's first podcast focused on government services and their future. In this podcast, we talk about everything related to government excellence, government service design and delivery, GovTech, and citizen engagement. Join us for insightful interviews and conversations every month. Visit us online at gx.ae. Roberto, welcome to the GX podcast. It's such a pleasure to host you here today. Tell our audiences a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ian. A pleasure is mine. My name is Roberto Croci. I'm the managing director for Microsoft for Startups across Middle East and Africa. Based out of Dubai, I joined Microsoft a year and a half ago with the mandate of building from scratch a division within Microsoft that looks after the startup ecosystem and what Microsoft can do to empower founders and startups across the region to achieve more, which is in line with the broader Microsoft mission, right? So we set up our operations a year and a half ago. We had the time to build a wonderful team, but also build meaningful partnerships across the region. And we are excited about the journey ahead because we just launched a couple of relevant programs and we have more ideas to try and make an impact across the startup ecosystem in our region.
That's incredible. And, startups are in so many ways changing the way things are done in different sectors, whether it's healthcare, manufacturing, name it. And startups are what is creating that innovation. Now, in today's episode, we want to focus a little bit on government experience, government services, because government services and governance is such a big part of what the UAE does in an amazing way. And we want to talk a little bit about that. So I guess I want to ask you that one of the domains that is really gaining traction and the UAE is focusing on a lot is government experience. How do you change how citizens services are delivered? How do you reduce friction points? How do you think startups can change this?
Look, this is great. Actually, I believe there is no better region in the world where we can have a talk about the involvement and the role of government, right, in bringing innovation and the whole initiatives we have seen in the UAE, for example, around smart cities, around caring about citizen experience in living in Dubai and empowering citizens to have access to smart services, leveraging technologies like blockchain, like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so on and so forth to provide better services to citizens, right? So I believe, first of all, we live in a region where government has a direct interest in diversifying economy from oil to knowledge-based. So the involvement is pretty high compared to other regions. And this is turned to be good because there's been a push from government to put entrepreneurship high in the agenda and to empower startups and founders to build meaningful solutions for citizens as well. In fact, in the whole area of government, smart cities, we have seen startups playing a key role here, trying to come with innovative solutions, whether it's just, new business models, but also sometimes it's just adoption of technology to make existing processes smarter, right? Or better, or faster, or more automated. Or think about, we live in a region in the UAE where the highest percentage of population is expats. And most of the people, have a smartphone with them. And most of the services, if you think about it, is pretty awesome. Most of the services are delivered through the smartphone. I'm right now connecting from Italy. I'm back in Italy, and I can tell you, I can feel the difference, right? So I had to do a couple of papers for where we're purchasing an apartment, and you cannot imagine how still cumbersome and difficult the process is to interact with government, and how manual some of these operations are. Whereas UAE and the government has been pushing hard the agenda on smart cities, on e-services for citizens, and digitization of all processes for public administration and public services. So startups here can play a key role because technology is there, but it's the use you do of technologies to empower services and experiences for citizens that can be empowered even more than what you have seen so far.
So, do you think that business environment exists in the UAE? Where do you think that business environment is to kind of facilitate going forward with an entirely digital economy. Where are we with respect to that in the UAE?
Yeah, look, I believe that the key ingredients of the digital environment start being mature in the UAE. I've personally witnessed. I've been living in the UAE now for almost 7 years, and I can tell. I can definitely have seen the maturity increasing across the digitization of many different businesses, of different services, and so on and so forth. You have seen also the sophistication of technology being deployed and used, the increased interest in government in diversifying economy, the increased participation of private and public sector around joint initiatives. So the ingredients definitely are there. What probably needs to happen is, yes, as an enabling factor, we probably need to have more abundance of founders, entrepreneurs, startups that feel confident building from the UAE. And we need to increase the quality of these startups and the availability of probably also availability of early stage funding to make sure that we have an healthy funnel that we can build in the region, right? So it all starts with abundance of ideas at the top, ideas that goes into the MVP, into the product market fit, into a growth stage, scale stage, and then probably an exit, an IPO, or an acquisition, right? So it's a funnel. So we need to make sure that we nurture the funnel from the very early stages so that we have that abundance that can flow into startups that are going to be successful and scale from this region. But definitely the ingredients are there. The time seems to be more mature. And it feels like the trend being positive for UAE to build a regional hub around entrepreneurships and startups across the broader Middle East and North Africa region.
What would be your recommendation for governments to engage with startups? What about stimulating that innovation-based startups, innovation economy, and to drive growth? What should governments focus on?
Absolutely. So this is an amazing question because on one hand, government here has been putting in place a series of new regulations, policies, and more incentives that are along the lines of making life easier for entrepreneurs and founders to set up a business here, increase the ease of doing business from the UAE, and think about some initiatives like the golden visa or the visa for entrepreneurs. Think about initiatives like foreign ownerships on businesses here. All the sum of all these different measures that have been recently rolled out and adopted here in the UAE are along the lines of making life easier and simplifying the process of setting up a business and running a business from the UAE. What government can do is definitely align the different stakeholders around the ecosystem towards what are the key priorities and areas of investment, first of all, right? So there is a merit in being focused and building success in specific industries, for example, where there are assets available in the region, in the UAE, that are unique to this region, right? So there is no point in trying to build a new Silicon Valley because here the reality is we are starting from a very different starting point, and we have a very different ecosystem, right? So I believe the role of the government here is in shaping policies as they already started doing, in changing regulations to be ahead of the curve, in crafting programs and making the UAE attractive, not only to attract talent, but also retain talent and make constantly simpler and simpler for founders to build and maybe fail as well here, so that there is a thriving ecosystem around that the government has been empowering. Meanwhile, aligning the private sector as well, and venture capital and accelerators and ecosystem players and tech players, to provide that support system that entrepreneurs need to have around themselves in order to build with confidence and to be able to build products from here that can be exported as well to the rest of the world.
So you're essentially talking about the trifecta of people, product, and profit, which has
Yep.
started to happen in the UAE, and even the government or startups should kind of. There's that golden mix, right? If you get people, product, and profits right, then you can do all of these things. And I'm really pleased to see that happen in the UAE, and just that validation that's coming from you. It's great to hear that we're building an incredible future for the country, and not just for the country, for the region, I would say, here in the UAE. That's excellent. Uh, Now, in terms of a data-driven economy, I mean, you mentioned earlier that we're moving from an oil-based economy to an information economy. How far do you think we are in that journey? And of course, the role of startups in that. But what do you see in the next 2 to 10 years? I would say in terms of that data-driven economy taking a big role.
Yeah, I believe this is the direction, right? So uh, in the past, we have heard many times, the repeating over and over that data is the new oil. Interesting to mention this in our region, right? So definitely, I've seen the maturity of organizations leveraging more data as an asset to change their business models or to find different way to monetize the data and to provide additional or value added services to the users or to the clients. So the maturity in the region has definitely gone up, and we can see that by the fact that we have been able to attract international agencies or independent agencies or key players that have been playing a critical role elsewhere globally to the data-driven economy. Building their headquarter here in the UAE and start expanding their services and offering here from the usual suspects in tech companies from Microsoft, but also Amazon and Google and the like, Salesforce and Oracle and so on and so forth. But also new players like think about Ripple, think about Stripe, the whole fintech revolution, and all of these businesses are based on data, right? The beauty of data-driven organizations is that if you think about it, if you look at their P&L, they don't have heavy assets on their P&L, right? So it's more intangible. But the capitalization and the return that they can achieve and an impact that they have on the economy, not only in terms of job creations, but also in terms of attracting more investment and in terms of scaling, across a region where we know that there are nuances and maybe some frictions across some countries, right? So, but potentially we're talking about a region with 400 million people, where a data-driven economy can come with the monetization through different new ventures that can reach out to a wide population that is young. Think about countries that are close to the UAE, where we have a high population, young population, digitization just started, maybe still some cash-based economies like in Pakistan, for example, or unbanked population, like 80% of the population is unbanked in Egypt, and so on and so forth. Think about how new data-driven models can leapfrog, the adoption of technology in these countries and help accelerate digitization at a time where this started, right? So when corporates are adopting new technologies, but we have also these new business models, new ideas that can be co-opted. So how corporates can look at innovation maybe in new ways to probably leveraging startups that are already solving for those use cases. So net, I would say, in terms of data-driven organizations, the maturity definitely is there. The fact that the UAE has been attracting experts with experience and companies that set up headquarters here is definitely an asset that the UAE started leveraging in terms of building more sophistication, building more use cases, more adoption around data, and going beyond just the fact that we can leverage data, right? Turning that data into information, into insights, into new business models that are leveraged across different industries. And that they are disrupting even other industries, right? If you think about the interest of the UAE in specific key sectors like energy or healthcare or logistics or agri-tech, think about how data is going to be leveraged in these industries that can disrupt how things have been done historically or creating completely new businesses across the region. This is just a lot of opportunities that we can see ahead of us, and something that definitely is already happening here in the UAE.
Thank you, Roberto. You've talked about so many incredible things. I guess I want to ask you, and you alluded to that in the beginning, was the evolution of smart cities. So in the UAE, you have a space program, you have the government experience program, you have the expo coming up, which is going to be an intense thing for the entire world. It's an amazing, an incredible opportunity. Government has a star rating system. You've got the Moonshot Apprentice program in government. The things like the Sheikh Zayed housing program, the smart police station. So there are many, many, many firsts. that are pushing the boundaries of being able to utilize data, digitizing service. And I'm not even talking about the AI initiative, the blockchain initiative. There's a lot happening in the UAE with uh, technology within government, and how do we reduce friction points? How do we really excel? I guess this a smart city. Is this what a smart city should look like?
Interesting question. For sure, as you are saying, a lot of things are happening, and a lot of things that are projecting Dubai into the future. For sure, what we can witness here is a strong vision and leadership from a government perspective into reimagining what the future can look like, right? So let's start from the roots of Dubai. Has been a city that has been built in the middle of the desert. I mean, 30 years ago, and that has been witnessing a rapid evolution, and with all what we have seen building and developing here. But where this is going, so definitely it starts with having a strong vision from government, from the top, to invest ahead of time in not only invest in technologies, which is of course a foundational thing, but probably opening windows to allow people to reimagine the future, reimagining new experiences, right? With an eye on keeping people happy, but also redefining how businesses can be managed, redefining how certain experiences, whether in government smart services, smart procurement, smart contracts, and so on and so forth. To think about the whole hype of crypto or NFTs now, and so on and so forth, right? So many things. But the cool thing is that, and what I think the government is trying to ignite is people coming together, harnessing the power of these communities to have a common platform, which is Dubai itself, to reimagine the future. And this gives hope. This builds, enthusiasm. This builds excitement, and this also attracts more investment and more ideas around how we can leverage technology for good as well. So this is what I see, what I think it's exciting about Dubai. Whether what a smart city would look like, well, I don't know. I believe that it starts by focusing on what are the real needs that people have, right? So what I see Dubai is a perfect test bed for deploying new solutions and try it out on a population that is diverse by itself, with experts from all over the world. Dubai is a city that is a platform itself to try to connect services with businesses, with small medium businesses, with new startups, with new ideas, with new fresh blood of people that come from different backgrounds, and so on and so forth. So Dubai can be a test bed. And what probably needs to be built as a next step for this is how Dubai can export these to the rest of the world. Because at the end of the day, the UAE is a small population, right? Is about 10 million people, 80% are expats. So if testing or deploying these new concepts, these new ideas, this vision might be relatively easy here, how can Dubai can start building those relationships and partnerships globally to export these new technologies, these new business models, these new ideas to the rest of the world? How Dubai can attract startups that want to expand here, but at the same time build solutions from here that are very innovative because they're already thinking probably 20, 30 years ahead of time. How can we then export, build those corridors, those partnerships with other countries and other institutions in other countries that can make this happen at a scale. So this might be interesting. So far, definitely, Dubai has been doing an amazing job in leveraging new technologies, in leveraging innovative services. For example, again, the fact that we cannot do anything without our smartphone. Think about it, how it is making things relatively faster and easier, how interacting with government and institutions is very at one click distance from your in your smartphone, right? So this is a smart city, yes.
Yeah.
Is Dubai completely a smart city? Probably there are still things to be done, but what you can see is definitely a vision and a commitment from government specifically to be there and be very reactive to new ideas and new things that can potentially be deployed or can make the life of people happier, safer, faster, and so on and so forth. And that's what is embedded into what we can call, sorry, a smart city.
Of course. Roberto, I want to conclude with last couple of questions. I want your recommendation on if there was maybe one or two radical ideas like moonshots that you would like to put forward today, the way how governments deliver service to citizens and businesses, and how can new age entrepreneurs and startups help? What would be your moonshot idea?
Look, moonshot ideas by definition are it's the hard thing, right? So innovation is not only breakthrough, but it's sometimes is also incremental, and that's great. But Dubai by definition, if you close your eyes and you think about Dubai, you cannot but think about moonshot ideas. I believe Dubai, for example, itself in the UAE is a city that wants to position itself as a global hub for travel, for tourism, for hospitality. And the fact that there is investment despite or probably accelerated even before because of the pandemic and the COVID. So how can we reimagine the airports of the future? How can we reimagine the business or the traveler experience of the future? How can we reimagine the accessibility, a city that is accessible for everyone in the future, and so on and so forth. These by themselves are moonshot ideas, right? So how can we reimagine diversifying or empowering a whole economy without depending on oil. These are moonshot ideas that Dubai is trying to solve. These are some of the hard questions that the government is directly involved in, and where in Dubai we can see development ideas happening. But if you ask me advice for entrepreneurs here, well, I wouldn't go far than from the fundamentals of what entrepreneurship is and what it takes to build startups. Whether you are building the next big thing, but you're also building something that is, first of all, profitable but also sustainable, right? So you mentioned before the trifecta of people, product, and profit. And first of all, I would like to mention in this order, right? So people is the one key factor that determines the success of any venture, of any startup, right? So being able to have people feeling UAE like their home is, I think, number one priority for the government here, to continually roll out measures, incentives, initiatives, policies, regulations to make sure that people can consider UAE as their home. But people, and that comes with attracting and retaining great talent, so that founders that build from here can also have around them people that they can rely on to build the thriving businesses, right, in a thriving ecosystem. So people, number one. But then also is having more focus on falling in love with real problems. So we are in an ecosystem at large that has been driven by more consumer businesses, consumer focused startups, right? So there have been plenty of delivery services startups and so on and so forth. But probably the pandemic has accelerated is also an awareness that we have real big challenges ahead of us, right, as a society. So where I think that there could be a real impact and a real contribution of Dubai to the world is also nurturing a wave of entrepreneurs that, of course, are looking at the profitability of their businesses, but also at the societal impact of the businesses that they are working in. And that would be a moonshot startups by themselves, right? So what we can do, to tackle into and to solve for climate change, for the environmental issues that we're facing all over the places, for many other of the issues that our society is facing. So I believe that here we can expect the UAE to invest into enabling a new wave of entrepreneurs and founders that are empowered also to look more at what are the real problems that the society is facing, falling in love with these problems before falling in love with their ideas, right? So and probably also helping founders, entrepreneurs, corporates, private sector to identify what are the 2-3 big bets that the UAE wants to be the must-win battles, right? So what the UAE wants to be recognized globally for being the place globally that is really the place where these ideas are flourishing and these ideas are being solved, these ideas are first being addressed and these problems are being addressed, right? So this requires a continuous alignment between government and private sector, public and private sector, and a continuous review of which policies can enable a fast adoption and innovation and development around these ideas, alongside, again, as we said, attracting and retaining talent that are passionate about solving for these problems. So this would be the recommendations. I mean, it's about focusing on impact-driven initiatives that can definitely have an impact across our society and our world at large, because we have seen it. We have many challenges as a society we need to face, and looking at it positively, it means that we might have a new wave of entrepreneurs that are going to look at these problems with new eyes, with a more human-centered approach and human-centered leadership. And out of that, expectation is that we might have great startups, hopefully moonshots, but also regular startups that can have a real impact in our life.
Roberto, I want to ask you one last question on what is your recommendation for governments that
Mhm.
are trying to be future ready and offer services and better experiences to their citizens? What would be your recommendation to all the governments who will listen to this podcast?
Yeah, I would say on one hand, one recommendation is definitely to leverage more, the partnerships. Look more at the interactions with other players like private sector, tech companies as partnerships, right? So how can government empower big corporations, tech companies, to build that infrastructure, that platform that is needed for founders, for tech startups to build their products from the region. This is number one. Second is doubling down and investing into education and skilling. Yes, in a remote or hybrid work environment, we can tap into talent everywhere in the world, but still looking at the sustainability of the economy here, it's definitely something where government needs to double down is in the education and keeping the bar high when it comes to education, right? So setting very high standards of what quality looks like, what good looks like, and building those skills in the new generation of talent that will be created from here, from this region. And last but not least, I would say it's very important that government will have. Sorry, I had a point in mind I wanted to mention about government. Give me 1 second. I wanted to think about it. So I mentioned the relationship and empowerment of corporations, of corporates and private sector talent. I had another point that I wanted to touch base on. Um, yeah, I completely. So I wanted to mention it. So probably this will require you to edit a little bit more our chat, but um, it will come to mind. But definitely, government can also play a role in looking ahead of time when it comes to youth, right? So we were talking about education. So doubling down in the investment when it comes to empowering youth to understand how to understand that entrepreneurship can be a path forward, right? So and building new businesses and having this entrepreneurial mindset, even if youth will not end up being, all of them will end up being founders, but even if they end up working in either the government or corporates, they have a lot with that entrepreneurial mindset that they can bring and impact the economy on, right? Because we need to come to these businesses with new ideas, with a new approach, and with a diverse set of ideas. And yes, I remember the last point I wanted to mention is definitely one recommendation for government is um, how do you define success? And probably this is a key topic because one thing is, for example, success is we are attracting 100 startups in the UAE, for example. Is that really success? Does that tell about the quality of the startups? Does that tell about how those startups are impacting on the local economy, right? Sometimes we are surrounded by a number of vanity metrics that are good in the sense that, as we said before, as an enabling factor, we need to build for quantity, right? So we need to have abundance of things around to build an healthy funnel. But my recommendation for government would be to really think through what can make a difference. So how we can measure success when especially when we talk about building a thriving startup ecosystem, what's the impact on economy? So what are the metrics that we should be looking at to say, hey, this is being really successful beyond the hype and PR that of course needs to happen to build the positive reinforcement, to build excitement about the region and to attract people. But then in order to retain people and in order to retain startups and ideas and these intangible assets, I believe the success of everything will start from the end. And the end is, how do we measure our success? And this is something I would love to see from government here, given the strong leadership and the strong vision. The missing piece I see is more clarity sometimes, or more decision, more confidence into the real key metrics of success that are real key metrics of success and not just vanity metrics.
Excellent. Well, Roberto, thank you so much for being part of this episode of the GX podcast. We really appreciate your time, your energy, and your enthusiasm, and we definitely look forward to hearing back from you and having you on in the future. So, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ian. A pleasure being with you today, and looking forward to keep the conversation going and see the progress of our ecosystem here in the UAE.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you.